It really was an embarrassing movie to work on.
Oh, God, can you come by every week? I love it so much. Nobody ever tells the tea. Hello, I'm Jacqueline Coley, and welcome to a special episode of Seen on the Screen, brought to you by Make It Universal and Rotten Tomatoes, where we talk movies with some of the people behind the scenes at NBC Universal. When entertainment works best, sometimes it opens a window into a world we've never imagined. Other times it shows us a mirror image of our lives with a heightened sense of home. Today, we're going to dig into the question, what have you seen on the screen that does that? My guest today is Dean DeBlois, the writer and director of DreamWorks and Universal Pictures' new live-action How to Train Your Dragon. Dean, welcome to Seen on the Screen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited because, first of all, this is probably one of the most prepared moments I've been for an interview like this because I've watched all the How to Train Your Dragon animations. I've seen now the live action. And I've been to Berk. And I think this is crazy that this 17-year journey where I get to go do all this stuff now started with you and a pen and a thought and a story. So talk a little bit about your journey to How to Train Your Dragon, first starting at the animation, but then how you got to the live action.
The first animated movie kind of came out of nowhere. Chris Sanders, who I had made Lilo and Stitch with, was working at DreamWorks on a movie called The Croods.
Yep.
And he was called over the weekend by the then CEO of DreamWorks, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and said, I want you to step off of the movie you're on and step into How to Train Your Dragon because it's coming out in 15 months. And we need to start over. We need a new story. So previous versions had been very loyal, very faithful to the book, but the book was proving to be a little too small. And he wanted a bigger audience and a bit more of a mature story. So Chris called me and said, what are you doing right now? Because I've got a job for us to do. We need to write and direct this thing and get it into theaters within 15 months.
Wow.
So it was, we jumped right into the deep end, but it was pretty liberating because it's something that I consider to be in my wheelhouse. I love stories of young protagonists in over their heads in a world of fantasy or supernatural. And we had the great wish fulfillment of being able to bond with an animal, especially a powerful, amazing animal that can take flight. So there was a lot in here to dig into.
Yeah. For folks that watch the podcast who are not listening to us, we have redecorated in How to Train Your Dragon every which way, also including this brand new book. This is the art and making of DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon.
It's a mix of wonderful set photography and a mix of artwork and some models and all of the great disciplines that went into creating the world of Berk. I've only seen some early layouts of it, but yeah, it's incredible. You got some full layouts and then just a whole lot of behind the scenes.
Oh, wow. Look at all of that.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
A
lot of beautiful work and love went into it.
I can't wait. Again, because everything y'all make, every frame does feel like a picture. And even in live action, it's like it's all still there. Oh, I love it so much. I think that when people think of How to Train Your Dragon, one of the things that's interesting is that sort of like the thrill of flight. It is these magical creatures, but really at the heart of it, it's a story about fathers and sons. It's a story about community. And as you were getting ready to transfer this into a live action, I imagine that it was very important that you do the same things you did when you were adapting the book, which is keep the things that you need to keep there, but find a way to be true to the story. How did you approach that? Like, as somebody who you're like, well, I wrote it, I've lived it, I've been through all these different chapters with it, but now I'm at the helm of this new iteration and I kind of get to decide. What was your litmus test? How did you go about it?
Well, the first conversations were in partnership with the studio. They made it clear that that's the story they wanted, not some sort of tale inspired by How to Train Your Dragon. And that meant that we could really lean into all of the things that live action promises. So you can lean into the subtlety of actors, and you can lean into the grounded reality of real sets in a real world, and all of the immersiveness you could get from the language of live action. But for me in particular, I think there is a core relationship at the center of this, which is about finding your own voice. And with Mason Thames, he really managed to capture what it's like to be an outsider and to feel that you have to change who you are in order to fit in order to be a success. Because this story is about marching to the beat of your own drum, and having the courage to endure mockery and endure ridicule by following your heart and watching the world eventually change around you. And I think that's what's so empowering about it, and what seems to travel, what really resonates with the audience. And you dress it up in fantasy and you have dragons and everything else. It just gets better and better.
Yeah. For folks that have not gotten a chance to go to Epic and walk into Berk and really see your story, not as it is in the feature, but actually imagine as if you could go into the world of How to Train Your Dragon after the events of the first movie. That's really what it feels like walking in there. The very first thing you come across is your words. It is the basically the opening of it where you explain what Berk is. What does it feel like to know that there's this whole experiential experience now based around what you created in these first in these words, but then in these images and now in this live action?
It is surreal. I know that the Isle of Berk at Epic Universe is based on How to Train Your Dragon 2, the animated movie. So everyone that had a hand in making that movie can feel quite validated in seeing it in 3 dimensions and walking there and knowing that people get to experience and live in that world in a really wonderful way. But it is surreal to think that this thing that we sort of collectively made now exists in a completely different experiential form.
Yeah.
We used to joke that the margin of success for an animated movie was if you got an ice show. And so on Mulan, when they announced that they were going to do an ice show, we thought, oh, victory. But now, these days it's
want a theme park.
It's a theme park.
Yeah, the stakes are higher. Maybe that's cute, but I've got a ride. I've got 3 of them actually.
Right.
You're online a little bit, right? Have you seen the reactions to Hiccup and Toothless? Because
I've seen. There is one that really warms my heart, and it's Connor from Love on the Spectrum meeting Toothless for the first time, and how important it was that he got over his hurdle having face-to-face experiences. So I love his retelling of that experience, and I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah. I'm curious what it was like before you even walk onto set, figuring out how you would find someone like Mason, deciding that you wanted to bring Gerard Butler back and then also invite new folks like Nico. How was the casting process? Because these, again, are characters that have been dancing around your head for better part of 2 decades.
Yes. I mean, it was certainly daunting at first when you think, where do we even start? But we had a wonderful casting director in Lucy Bevan, and Lucy pulled together just a wonderful array of talented actors, young and old. And I had seen The Black Phone. So I was aware of Mason, and I knew he was about the right age, and I was really impressed with his acting chops. So I had asked that he be added to the list. And it meant that we were able to not only have auditions with some of these young actors, many of them you'd never heard of, and some of them had smaller roles, but we could put them together and we could really see what the dynamic was between them. And from the start, just putting Nico together with Mason, there were sparks flying. It came together in such a great way. Nico Parker is an amazing young actor who is very versatile, but she was the only Astrid that we had auditioned who could deliver really harsh dialogue directed toward Hiccup without making it seem mean-spirited and cruel.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. She just sort of exudes this high school sports team captain vibe. Yeah. She's holding everyone to a standard, and she takes herself quite seriously. She resents a bit of Hiccup's privilege because she's worked so hard. And she just becomes such a great character as a test case for Hiccup to change from the traditional way of thinking in the community of Berk to this more enlightened, dragon-friendly view of the world that Hiccup discovers.
And their chemistry is really amazing. I kind of have been dying to ask you this question as somebody that is now responsible for this huge undertaking as far as adapting the live action, but also someone that has to be obsessed with the little details. What did you find was the most difficult part of the transition, and what was the most unexpected surprise?
I think the most difficult part of the transition is in animation, you have plenty, almost too much time to think about decisions, because the process moves very slowly. And so you can second guess yourself to death. In live action, you prepare as much as you can, but you find yourself on a set, you have a number of shots to get done within a day, and then the set's gone. So you have to be in the moment, really responsive, and you have to make decisions with conviction, because everyone's looking to you, to call the shots literally, but also to be satisfied with them at the end of the day. And you have to know that you're collecting everything you need for the editing process to put together a movie that's going to be satisfying and not lacking.
Yeah.
On top of all of that, I think the thing that surprised me the most was that if you do your preparation and you arrive with a fairly dense list of shots you get, if you can then put blinders on and let those 300 or so people disappear and just focus on the actors, magical things can happen where just within their own blocking and interplay and the silences and the nonverbal, all of that communication that's happening becomes something that brings truth and honesty. And so it doesn't feel like you're staging a How to Train Your Dragon play with, Gerard Butler looking like he stepped out of a Renaissance fair. Instead, you have characters that fully embody who they are within the story, and it comes through with honesty. And that was quite surprising, is just giving the room for that play to happen within a very structured, very sort of controlled period of time.
I don't want to say this because, again, we just built Epic Universe where we have the Isle of Berk there, but you just made me think that I really would like to see a How to Train Your Dragon Renaissance themed fair. Like Universal, make it. I would go. I'm literally going to the Renaissance fair in like a week. It's like, I'm like, literally, I was like, oh, that would be amazing. Make us all Vikings and have it all be Universal stuff. This is an idea.
This is an idea.
This will be, listen, the people watching it, make it happen. Before we dive into some of the things that you have seen on the screen, one of the last things I want you to do is preview something that folks have spied from the trailer, and I can't honestly wait for them to get to see it on June 13th. And that is that moment from the animation when Hiccup rides, that thrilling moment of flight, that whole sequence. If you could just preview that for them, because I've done it, they haven't, but you made it, and I can't wait for folks to experience it.
Well, I think you're talking about Test Drive.
Yeah.
It's set to John Powell's iconic music. And that's one of a couple of scenes that gave us that challenge of delivering everything, the thrill, the wish fulfillment, the jeopardy, and that satisfying arc of going from being very tentative to very sort of confident and intuitive by the end of it. All of that in live action meant that we could also lean into live action cinematography. So we were watching movies and kind of taking, either in flight or on motorcycles or, Mission Impossible type movies. We were trying to get as much of that visceral, palpable, immersive, experiential camera work into this as possible. And we had the ability to really showcase the physical island of Berk and the skies above it and the coastlines surrounding it. So everything came together in that scene. All of the location scouting through Iceland and the Faroe Islands and Scotland, and then all of the innovation that we did when it came to Mason riding Toothless. Wow. Which is more complicated than you think it is, because we wanted Mason to feel like a jockey on a horse. In other words, he's moving with the creature. And that meant building a giant animatronic version of Toothless that sat on top of these pistons, this big gimbal, so we could get movement in every direction. And as the dragon leans or banks or rolls or pitches and dives, so does Mason. He moves with the creature. And all of these parts are independent. So the head is independent from the neck, from the body. And so he's not just sitting there. He's not just along for the ride. He is co-piloting. And you really get to feel that sense of seeing it all rendered photoreal with Mason and a photoreal Toothless, and that bond and that exhilarating wish fulfillment of feeling what it is to fly.
I can't wait for folks to feel it. I got to see it in like the best theater possible. I think it was thrilling. All right, let's dive to some of the things that you've seen on the screen. Little reminder on our popcorn buckets. This first one is quotes. I'm going to give you a quote from a film, hopefully one that you remember. Okay. And you're going to tell me if you remember which one it is. But with love comes loss, son. It's part of the deal. Sometimes it hurts, but in the end, it's all worth it. There's no greater gift than love.
Yes. That's from How to Train Your Dragon 3.
Hidden World.
The
Is it
Hidden
weird?
World.
Like you're like, I remember when this was written.
Yeah,
I remember every ounce of this. Or
Yeah.
actually, yeah, this is interesting. We don't talk to writers that often.
I think it was one of it was a way of keeping Gerard Butler and Stoic alive in the third movie after he had passed. It was revisiting memories with young Hiccup and those pivotal life lessons that he was now living in the present. So Hiccup's wrestling with the idea of holding on to Toothless versus setting him free. And that was one of those moments. It's just a truth that we all have to deal with in our lives, which is, you know, if you're going to love something, may come a day where you lose that thing you love, but it's in the end all worth it.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Next quote. Why, you stuck up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder.
I have no idea.
This is Carrie Fisher in The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh my God, I should know that.
Talking to Han Solo, and I really feel like it was my line read that I did not give you enough.
I should know that because How to Train Your Dragon 2 is our version of Empire Strikes Back. That movie was big for me.
This year is, I guess, the 45th anniversary. Yeah, 45th anniversary of Empire Strikes. Talk a little bit about your history with it, because you say it had a seminal effect on you. Obviously, you put it into the second film, but yeah, talk about it a little bit.
Star Wars, and specifically The Empire Strikes Back, ignited my imagination as a kid because I was just the right age. I'd seen Star Wars when I was 7. I saw The Empire Strikes Back when I was 10. It's when I was drawing and when I was writing my own stories and acting things out with action figures in my backyard. And I think that is what drove me toward a career in storytelling.
Yeah. And
dreaming up worlds and designing characters. Everything about The Empire Strikes Back took something that I loved and expanded it in every direction. So it was broader, it was more dangerous. The costumes were cooler, the vehicles were cooler, the worlds got bigger. And when tasked with coming up with ideas for a sequel to How to Train Your Dragon, I said, what if we do something that's an ode to The Empire Strikes Back? In other words, everything gets bigger and more interesting and more exciting and more adventurous, but it's only the second act of a 3-act coming of age. Yeah. And therefore, there must be a third film. There must be a conclusion to it.
Oh, I dig that. Yeah, you're already setting up your next gig. I get it. I appreciate that. I like it. Next quote. I'm cold, I'm lost, and I'm hungry. And the beetle says I'm ugly.
I'm scratching my head. I don't know.
Thumbelina.
Oh my God.
Which I have not seen, but I do know about.
Okay. So one of my promises to the crew at the start of this film was I recognize that I'm a rookie. You're all very talented. You have long careers. You've worked on great films. I'm sure you've worked on some bad films. This will not be a bad film.
Wow.
I can't promise it's going to be a box office success or that it will be a success in any other terms, but I can tell you that you will be able to take your loved ones to a screening of How to Train Your Dragon at the end of the day, and it will be worth all of the late nights and the weekends and the delayed vacations, because I know what it's like to work on a movie where you sink your heart and soul into it, and at the end of the day, you're embarrassed to say that you worked on it.
Oh no,
Thumbelina. And all of the movies I worked on with Don Bluth.
Girl! You know what? I like it.
It's okay. It really was an embarrassing movie to work on.
Oh God, can you come by every week? I love this so much. Nobody ever tells the tea. But this is what I think is interesting, is so many people learn from good experiences as much as they learn from bad ones. And I think it says something that your first day on set, you were trying to be honest with them. Be like, I don't know how this is going to end, but I know that I can create a really good movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's great. Is there a movie, and I will just ask you this as an animator and someone that really loves animation, that you wish you could have been a part of that you weren't?
Yes, absolutely. The Iron Giant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched The Iron Giant with such envy because it was, to me, groundbreaking in how fresh it was and how poignant it was and simple. So I admire Brad Bird as a storyteller and a director, but that film, which was made for, a pretty modest budget and ultimately wasn't really supported as it went out there. So it's a cult favorite, but it wasn't a huge hit for the studio. But I think for fans of animation, it stands as one of the one of the most notable animated films to have come out in the last 30 years.
I would agree. Give it up for Vin Diesel too.
Yes.
Excellent. I love this. I love the stories. Honestly, it's really great too because we're kind of taking a little stop along your filmography with all the incredible things that you've done. I feel animators especially, there's always fun stops. Let's go to the next stop, next popcorn bucket.
Okay.
This one is true or false. The 1998 animated feature Mulan was the second Disney animated feature to be primarily produced at the Florida Animation Studio.
True. Yes.
False. It was the first.
It was the first. Oh, because they had done pieces of. So the context for that is they in Florida had done pieces of The Lion King, but Mulan was considered to be the primary. Yeah, it was primarily animated.
But you got the
Orlando,
deets
Florida.
on that. Were you down there in Florida?
I did. Yeah, I moved to Florida for the finishing of Mulan. That movie took 5 years to make, and so it had gone long because it took a while for us to figure out the story. But I moved to Florida with the Burbank-based team to finish the film there, and I stayed to complete it as the head of story once Chris Sanders moved on to develop his own original project to pitch, which was Lilo and Stitch.
Yes, which is getting its own live action. I really do feel, honestly, though, the brands are strong. And honestly, I think you're just following the genius of all these incredible animators and storytellers. But I just have to ask you, were you around at any point when they recorded the Mulan songs?
I did go to the scoring stage while Jerry Goldsmith was recording the score with all of the musicians. And there was a small young woman in the back corner in a leather jacket and blonde hair, and she wasn't making eye contact with anyone. And I said, "Who's that?" And someone said, "Her name is Christina Aguilera. She'll be big one day." And she was there to record the Reflection song.
Girl, I stayed staring at my Disney Channel for hours waiting because they used to play the music videos in between the movies and you didn't know when it would pop up. So you just had to wait. And I waited until I could record that music video and I wore that VHS out. And I'm telling my age, but I don't care. I love that song and I love Christina Aguilera and you were there.
And I storyboarded that sequence.
Yeah. Okay. Just... This is like, sorry, forgive Thumbelina. You were from Mulan. I think every awkward girl has a specific love affair. Any tom girl, like tomboy girl, like they love Mulan. So
I'll tell you a connection too. There's a lesson that we learned on Mulan when we finally figured out the story, that this is a girl who wants to do right by her family and by her society, but she's ill-equipped to ever succeed. As opposed to a girl who runs off and impersonates a soldier to get away from her life. Those were the two ideas that had been balanced. We chose the one where she loves her father so much, she's willing to risk shame and risk being vilified by society in order to save his life. And from that lesson, we pulled this idea of a character that is easy to root for as one who feels like she's not good enough as she is. She needs to change who she is in order to be accepted, and goes on a journey where she comes to realize, I can just be who I am and let the world change. That's Hiccup in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So we've kind of carried that idea forward in different forms.
I love that. The Mulan Hiccup connection. Facts. Do the crossover, Disney. You know you want to. Kidding. True or false? The production team created a total of 10 Viking-era tapestries, some as large as 3.5 meters, which depicted Berk's historical and mythical stories. True or false?
True. 100% true.
But how many did they create?
Oh, I don't know exactly how many, but I can tell you that
it was more than 10.
It was more than 10. Okay.
Yeah. False on the number, true on the imatum. Love it.
I'll take it. We wanted to explain why this particular tribe lived on that island.
Okay.
And we saw the opportunity in the live action movie to suggest that Vikings had traveled far and wide and they encountered cultures from all over the Far East, the Silk Road, North Africa, everywhere they went, and found that there were dragons that were problems in every one of these regions. So the history of our tribe is made up of all of these, the best Viking fighters from all these different cultures coming together to defeat a common enemy and setting up on that island because they knew it was within spitting distance of a key dragon's nest. So that's the history of our tribe, and that's why it's such a mix of cultures in the tapestries, in the artwork, and the costumes, and the weaponry.
That's how they used to tell their stories.
Right.
And I love that.
And record their history.
Yeah.
So if you actually took a look at all of the tapestries that were created for How to Train Your Dragon, you would see the story of Vikings intermingling with these different cultures and how they came together and set up shop basically on the island of Berk.
I love that. Sailors all together fighting one common enemy. I
Yeah.
dig it. All right. True or false? For the new live action How to Train Your Dragon, full scale foam heads were built for each dragon species.
False.
Yes, false. All of them save the Red Death because that would be how big?
The size of a building. So we created our dragons digitally as animatable creatures, but we sent those specs to a company called Stitches and Glue, and they make from those specs foam heads and bodies of the dragons that are then puppeteered by this amazing team of puppeteers led by Tom Wilton, so that when you have Mason or Nico or Gerard in a scene with dragons, they are interacting with an acting dragon.
A real actor too, like
Yeah.
somebody that's
It's not
used to like, yeah.
It's not a tennis ball on
Wow.
a stick. You actually have somebody who's creating the sense of the dragon.
Yeah.
So not only can you frame for the dragon and have something to cut together when you're in the editing process, but the actor has a scene player.
Yeah,
has
something
a
that
scene
you can look
partner.
at.
It's really amazing.
I can barely like keep like just the red light on the camera. I'm like, how do y'all look at that and pretend that's anything other than a red light on a camera? But that's why they get paid to do that. Lovely. I love all these details. Love it, love it, love it. Well, you did great. Thank you for all of the stories too. Like this is so much fun. And we've got to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What's your favorite movie snack?
My favorite movie snack is popcorn.
Okay, just by itself, nothing special?
I love, popcorn with a little bit of butter.
Okay.
Ironically, my least favorite movie snack in the hands of anyone else is popcorn.
Oh, yeah, because they're
'Cause
loud.
I hate to listen to people mingling around for popcorn and crunching
I'm with you
their
on that
mouths
one.
open.
Yeah, get them. I love this so much. I'm popcorn as well, but I like jalapenos on it. I'm a Texas girl. I like a little spice on my popcorn. I'm strange, I know. Last show that you binged. Have you had time?
The last show that I binged, I'm currently binging, is The Bear, and I'm loving it.
Is that what you do to relax? Because
Well,
that's an interesting show. It's like me though. I watch The Pit, which other people also say is a very tense show, but I like it. Favorite actor?
favorite actor, Cate Blanchett.
That's a great one. Favorite Cate Blanchett role?
I loved Cate Blanchett in Veronica Guerin.
I don't think I've seen that.
She plays a Dublin reporter.
Oh yes, this is a little while
Yeah.
ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay, dig. I love Tar.
Yeah, she's great.
Going to the movie theater alone, yay or nay? Sounds like a yay.
Yeah.
You're like the entire theater alone. I don't want anybody.
Yeah.
I will rent it out by myself. I dig that. And your favorite classic Universal film?
Does E.T. count?
Definitely E.T. counts.
Yeah, E.T. was pivotal for me.
The house that Amblin built in so many ways. Dean, this was great.
Thank
you
you
for being here. I can't wait for folks to see How to Train Your Dragon in theaters and IMAX June 13th. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait for everyone to see it.